Today, we're going to see how we can start to put some of the key pieces together using Bricks Builder to create a more fully featured website. Our example is going to be pretty simple, but it's going to show you how you can combine things like repeater regions, advanced custom fields, templates, all those kinds of things together to start getting a real feel for how you can use bricks in a real world project. So let me show you an example of what we're going to create. We're going to use a recipe blog as an example, but you can use this for anything you want. The principles are basically the same. So if we scroll down, you can see we've got a typical archive page, which will have a loop inserted into it with various different custom posts inside here. Each of these have unique information. We've got taxonomies associated with them. We've got custom meta fields associated with them, all those kinds of good things. So you can see we've got things like cooking time, calories, recipe types, and so on. If we hop into any of these, you'll see we have the single post template. Again, we've got the same kind of information here, different design. But if we scroll on through, we've got a lot more information, including our repeater regions for our nutritional information. So it doesn't matter what you want to add in here, you can add it in and it will be displayed inside the template. You've also then got the information about the actual recipe itself, how to go about it. We've got the ingredients set inside here, instructions, and any other information you may want to include. So now we've seen what we're going to create. Let's start creating it. So first things first, let's create the custom post type for our recipes. So we've got Advanced Custom Fields Pro installed. You do need Pro if you want to work with the repeater region, but if you don't want that part of this tutorial, you can get away with the free version without any problems at all. So let's first of all go into ACF. We're going to create a new post type. We're going to add new. We'll give this a name. We're going to call this recipes. And the singular recipe. That'll auto create the post type key. We haven't created any taxonomies yet. We'll do that in a moment, so there's nothing to select. We're going to choose this to be hierarchical, and we're going to pop into the advanced configuration. From there, we're going to make sure we've got title, editor, featured image, and we'll leave custom fields enabled. Everything else can be left as it is. It needs to be active. Labels, we're not going to touch those. Visibility, what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be menu position 1 in this example, and we'll choose an image that we're going to use for the icon. We'll choose this one of a carrot. That's perfectly fine. We'll leave everything as it is here. We don't want to exclude this from the search for obvious reasons. URLs, we're going to set this to have an archive. If you don't set this to have an archive, it doesn't know how to use it, so no archive will be available to you inside Bricks itself. If you want to, you can set an archive slug. So we'll set this to be recipes, and we'll pretty much leave everything else as it is. Okay, so once we've done that, we'll hit Save Changes. We now have a new entry right at the top for our recipe. So the next thing you want to do is go and create a taxonomy to associate with this so we can group all of our different recipes together. To do that, again, into ACF, use the Taxonomies option. We'll add a new taxonomy. We'll call this recipe types. Recipe type for the singular. Everything else will be auto-created. Again, we're going to set this to hierarchical. Even if you don't use a hierarchy inside your sort of taxonomies and all those kinds of things, it just is a much nicer way of working. So I would always recommend using hierarchical no matter what. Hop into advanced configuration again. We're going to say the option for sort terms. We're not going to worry about a default term. Make sure it's active. Labels, again, we're going to leave as they are. Visibility, everything looks good there. We're going to say we want to show an admin column. It just makes it a little easier. We're going to leave everything else as it is. Scroll back up to the top and set the post type and associate this with our new custom post type, which is recipe. Click Save Changes. And now if we come back up to our recipes, we have a new section called Recipe Types. So the third and final thing we need to do with ACF are create meta fields and associate those custom meta fields with our new custom post type for all the additional fields like the preparation time, calories, and all those kinds of good things. So all we're going to do is we're going to come back over, choose the option for field groups, click Add New one more time. We'll give this a name. We'll call this recipe extra fields. Before we add our fields in, let's scroll down to our settings and our location rules and set the post type is equal to our custom post type of recipe. So now we associate the new meta fields we're going to create with our custom post type. So those connections are already there for us. So now we can create the various different fields that we need. So let's go and create some of our first fields. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this over to be a number. This is going to be our preparation time. That will auto create the field name. But again, if you want to change that, you can do. Just make sure you don't have any spaces in there. Use either a dash or an underscore. We're not going to worry about validation, presentation, and so on. But obviously, if you wanted to set things up inside here to make sure these things are required, you can do all that and set it up exactly as you want. Let's add another field in. Again, this is going to be another numeric field. This is going to be the yield. Next up, we want the number of calories per serving. So again, we're going to add a new field in. Again, it's going to be a number field. Close that field down. Next, we're going to add in a small text field. We're going to set this to be a text area. I'm going to name this recipe overview. Add another field. This is going to be for our ingredients. So we're going to want to allow people to have a little bit more control over the actual way they style content and so on. So we're going to set this to be a WYSIWYG editor to give us a little bit more control. We'll name this ingredients. This time we are going to pop into the presentation section, and we're going to set this to be just visual only. I'm going to set this to have a basic toolbar. We don't want to have too many options available there. So again, close that one down. Next up, we're going to add another one in. So add a field in. Again, we're going to set this to be a WYSIWYG editor. Field label. It's going to be instructions. Again, we're going to pop into presentation. Set the same here as well. Just to be visual only with basic. There we go. And finally, we're going to add in our repeater region. So let's add this in. Scroll down until we find the option for repeater. We'll give this a name. We're going to call this nutritional information. And now what we can do is we can add the fields that we want in. Now, if you want more information about how to use repeater regions in ACF, connecting that up with working with Bricks Builder, there's a video here you can check out which goes into a lot more detail. So I'm going to skim over a lot of this quite quickly. But I say if you want more information, check that video out. Okay, so we're going to add 3 fields inside our repeater. First of all, let's add the first field in, and you can see this basically opens up exactly what we've just been doing. This just sits inside a repeater. And the beauty of working with repeater regions is we can have the same information or the same pieces of information, but we don't know how many times that's going to be needed. So people can just keep on adding and adding and adding. So this works great with this nutritional information, but you can use it in so many different use cases. So first of all, we're going to add in the nutrition type. We'll leave that set to text. That's perfectly fine. We'll close that field. We'll add another field. Now make sure you use the sub-field section, not this add field at the bottom. Otherwise, you're going to add a standard normal field in. We'll add a new field. Again, we're going to leave this set to text. Set this to nutrition value. Again, auto create. Add one final field in. We're going to set this to call daily allowance. And there we go. So we've now created our repeater region. Now you can, if you want to, choose from 3 different types of layouts from table, block, and row. We're going to leave this set to table. It works perfectly fine in this example. And if you expect to have potentially, 50 plus different records, you may want to add pagination in. For example, there's probably never going to be more than about half a dozen, so it doesn't really need it. So now we've got everything set up. We've got it associated with our post type of recipe. We can now click Save Changes. We've now created our custom fields, associated that with our custom post type, created a custom taxonomy to group our custom post type together, and everything is now in place. So let's first of all come over to our recipe section, come into recipe types, and we're going to add a couple of different taxonomies in here. So for example, we're going to add things like main meal, add a new recipe, desserts, add a new recipe type. We'll add one more in, and there we go. So we've now added a couple of taxonomies to group our content together for our new custom post type. Now if we come into all recipes, obviously there's nothing inside here yet, but you can see there's our recipe types. We told you we wanted that to be included. So all we need to do now is add a new recipe, and we can see all of the custom fields that we've added in are now available to us. So you've got our standard title, we've got our standard description, and our standard featured image. We've also got our recipe types, which are a taxonomy, and the 3 different recipe types we just created, and all of the custom fields underneath available to us, including our repeater region at the bottom. So I'm going to put one recipe in just to show you, and then I'm just going to quickly duplicate and create a couple of other examples, just so we've got some content in here. So first of all, let's give this a name. We'll say this is a main meal. We'll add our featured image. We'll set the featured image. Add in a basic description, preparation time, yield, calories per serving. We'll pop in a recipe overview. Then we'll pop in our ingredients. Finally, we'd add in some instructions. And then we've got our nutrition type, which is our repeater region. So all we need to do is add a row. And now we can just put whatever information is required. So nutrition type, we'll call the first one sodium. We're going to say this includes 24 milligrams. Daily allowance, we'll say 25%. We'll add another row in. Again, we'll put what values we want in. And we'll add one more for good measure. And there we go. We'll publish this. And we've now added our first recipe in. So if we come back out of here, there's our smash burgers. You can see it's a main meal type. So we've got the basics in place. Now I'm going to go and just repeat that a couple of times to add some recipes in so we've got some content available to us. And there we go. I've added in a couple more recipes. So now we have 4 different recipes. So we've got something to fill our designs out with. So with that being said, the next thing we need to do now is to create the 2 different templates that we need for our overall setup. The first one we're going to create is the archive, which will list all of our different recipes. And then we're going to create the single post template. So let's start off by creating that first template. So we're going to come over into Bricks. We're going to choose the option for templates. Create and add a new template. First things first, let's give this a name. Now I always like to make sure that I name things in a very logical fashion. So when I look back over, I can see exactly what any template refers to. So we're going to call this recipe archive template. We're going to set the template type to be archive. If you want to apply template tags and so on to organize things, which I would advise you to do when you start to get a lot of templates. If you're dealing with a couple, a handful, it's not really worth worrying too much about. We'll click publish, and now we'll go and edit this with Bricks. Now we've created our template, we need to tell it where and when to use it. Even though we set this as an archive, it doesn't know when we want to actually reference this. So to do that, we're going to come to the cog for the settings in the top left-hand corner. And from there, we're going to open up the template settings. We have 2 different options here. The conditions tells it where and when to use the template, and the populate content is more for when we're building the template out, making sure we're actually looking at content that comes from the right part of our overall website, in this case, the recipes. So first of all, let's set our conditions. So we're going to add a condition, and we need 2 different kinds of conditions here. We need it to be the archive template for our recipes, but we also need it to be the archive template for any of the recipe types. So things like our dessert, main meals, and so on. We're going to use the same template for both. So let's apply the conditions. So first things first, we want to make sure this is set to be archive. Then we choose the archive type. So we're going to choose the option for post type. Then we're going to open the last option up and choose our custom post type, which is recipes. And there we go. So there's the first condition set up. Now you don't need to add another condition in. We can add extra sections in here. So even though it says post type, we can add another one in. So we can click. This time we're going to choose categories and tags. Then you see this opens up a new option for archive terms. Click to open that up. And you can scroll down and you can see we've got all terms, recipe types. So choose that option. We'll also say apply it to child terms. So this is now going to catch either of those conditions. So whether it's just the post type of recipes, or it's going to have any of the categories, things like I say, like main meals and so on. Next up, let's go to populate content. We'll open this up. We can choose the content type. So for this example, we want to choose archive posts. Then choose our post type of recipes. Click apply and preview. Even though nothing's going to be seen, it will now reload, refresh, and allow us to see that data. So now we've set up the conditions and we've set up the populated content. The next thing we need to do is go and actually build the template out. Now, before we go any further, let's just hit save to make sure that everything is committed. Now, before we go any further, I am using a couple of third-party tools to speed up my overall design process. But I want to say at this point, you do not need to use these tools at all. So for example, you can see I've got these little icons down the right-hand side. These are shortcuts to the common elements that we have in the normal elements panel. Things like your sections, your divs, your containers, those kinds of things. And also things like your headings, your basic text, and so on. I'm going to use these because it speeds up my process. But you can follow along by simply replacing anything that I use on the right-hand side with the normal elements on the left-hand side. So just bear that in mind. You do not need this. Secondly, I'm using Core Framework, which is a CSS framework, which means that I've got global settings set up for things like my spacing, my typography, and so on to give me consistency and speed. Again, you do not need to use it. You can replace any of the values that I use in any of the instances with any kind of value you want, whether that's ems, rems, pixels, percentages, whatever. I'm just using these to speed up my design process. So don't feel you can't follow along. Just substitute what I use for what values you want to use. Hope that makes sense and is clear. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is start to build out our template. First thing, I want to add a section with an inner container. So we'll click to add that in. Again, like I say, this is all available to you using the options here. You could just click on section and that would do exactly the same as what I've just done. Okay, so the next thing, I want to make sure that we've got a bit more space at the top because I'm using a floating header which overlaps. I need to compensate for that. So I'm going to hit the section, make sure that's selected, come over to my styles, into my layout, and I'm going to use a margin at the top to give me some more space. This is where, like I say, I'm going to use core framework, but you can put a value in. Right click, and I'm just going to choose the option for 3XL. As you can see, that now gives me pretty much equidistant above the top and bottom. Okay, so we've now got the basics in place. Now we're going to create the card design that's going to make up the bulk of our archive, and then we'll apply a loop to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the container to make sure that's active. We're going to add a block inside there because this goes full width, gives us most control. So let's make sure we've got our block selected, and we're going to add in, first of all, a heading. Then we're going to add in an image, and finally we're going to add in rich text. So these are the three key basic elements that are going to make up our card design. Now the next thing we want to do is go and change the content to the right content. At the moment it's just putting filler content in. So we'll select our heading, we'll come over onto the left hand side, go into content, replace this I am a heading, we'll get rid of that completely. Going to click our little lightning bolt for our dynamic data, and from there, now again this is something that you won't see, this is part of Advanced Thema, you'll just see a drop down list. All the exact same options are available. Just scroll to the list until you find what I'm showing you. So first thing you want to do is choose the post title. And you see that now pulls in the wrong information, but that's perfectly fine for now. We haven't created the loop, so it doesn't know what to use. Select our image, come over, set the dynamic data, we'll select it. This time we're going to choose the featured image option. Again, it doesn't know what to use at this point, so don't worry about that. And finally, we're going to come to our rich text. We're going to select this little block of text and remove it. Click our lightning bolt, come over to post, and from there we're going to choose post content. And from there we're also going to come down underneath where it says the word limit. We're going to click and we're going to set this to be 25 so we can limit the number of words that are going to be displayed for longer content. Okay, so we've created the basic outline for our card. Now we need to go and create a loop to tell it how we want all of this to work. So first things first, let's click on our block. And what we're going to do here is we're going to come over and choose the query loop under content on the left hand side. Click the little sort of icon. And from there, we're going to tell it what content we want to reference. So we're going to choose posts. Choose the post type to be recipes. We're going to say order by publish date. You can set ascending or descending however you want. And we'll set this to have something like 6 posts maximum. Okay, so we've now created our loop. So you can see now we start to see the right information being pulled through. There's our 4 different recipes, but it looks absolutely rubbish. Let's rectify that. Let's choose our container, and from there we're going to come over to the left hand side again, and we're going to change the display from flex. We're going to change this to grid. I'm going to come into our grid template columns, and we're going to do 1FR, 1FR. We now have a nice 2-column layout, so everything already looks considerably better. Before we go any further, let's click on save to make sure we save that. But obviously, things don't look quite right yet. We need to start some styling and make things look a lot better. Well, let's deal with that next. Now, for good accessibility, we want to make sure that these are not being left as divs. We want to set them as an unordered list and list items. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our container is selected, and you can come over and you see the HTML tag is set to div. We can click and we can say we want this to be an unordered list. We're going to click on our block, which is our card design, which we'll rename in a moment. We'll select that and do the same thing again. This time though, we're going to change this from div. We're going to set this to li for a list item. So now that semantically makes a lot more sense. Each of these now is going to be a list item as part of an unordered list. Now let's start to organize things a little better, and then we're going to start styling things to make everything look a lot nicer. So first things first, we're going to come up to our container and we're going to call this recipe loop container. Then we're going to come down to our block and we're going to rename this. We're going to call this card. So making sure we've got our recipe loop container selected, we're going to come over to the left-hand side. I'm going to set the gap for our grid. And again, I'm going to use one of my values from Core Framework, but you can use a standard arbitrary value, whatever you want to use. Okay, so there's the first part done. Now, the next thing I want to do is apply some global classes to the various different parts of this so we can style things in a consistent fashion. So with our card selected, what we're going to do is we're going to give the card a global class. So we're just going to come over, we're going to call this recipe-card. So now we've named our recipe card as in recipe-card. We're now going to use BEM naming to name the other three elements. Now BEM just stands for block element modifier. Don't worry too much about what all of that means. It's just a naming convention that makes life easier. And if you hand this off to someone else that's accustomed to working with BEM naming, they'll very quickly and easily see exactly what classes you've set up and how they relate to various different components. We've got recipe-card for our card design. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another one now for our heading. So we'll select the heading. I'm going to do recipe-card. So exactly the same. We're going to then do 2 underscores and we're going to call this heading. So what we're effectively saying is that this heading is associated with our recipe card. That's basically all we're doing here. Hit the enter or return. Do the same thing now for our image. So recipe-card underscore image. And then finally our description. So again, recipe-card underscore excerpt and hit enter or return. So now we have classes applied to the card, the heading, the image, and the rich text or excerpt area, and we can reference those. And because we're using BEM naming, we can see when we take a look at our card and then we take a look at heading, we can see that this heading is associated with our recipe card. Same thing for our image, same thing for our excerpt. Just makes life a lot easier. So it's a pretty simple and standard way of working. Okay, so now we've given those classes, we can start to style things. So for example, if we come to our image, we can now come over, making sure we've got that class selected, come into style, for example. Inside there, we're going to come into our borders, open our border option up, and from there, we're just going to connect our radius. I'm going to use again one of my global classes. We're going to set this radius to be small, and now we've associated that and connected it up. So that value now is being applied on a global class level. It's just a nice simple way of working. And then anywhere else we want to use this, if we use the exact same naming convention, all of those will be changed if we make a change to any of the instances of that particular global class. It's where working with a tool like Bricks makes life so much quicker and easier. Okay, so next up, let's choose our heading and let's start to style things. So again, making sure we've got our global class selected, we can come into our typography, we can set our styling and sizing and so on inside here. So again, let's set things up. Let's go for something like large. We'll set our font weight to be something like 600, capitalize the first letters, job done. And if we want to, we can do anything we want then on the actual text at the bottom. But that looks okay. So we're going to select our card now, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to our content, again, making sure our recipe card is selected, so we're styling it on the global class level, not the ID level, and we're going to put a row gap in to separate things out a little bit. We'll say 2XS, so that now gives us a little bit of space between the image, the title, and the details underneath. So let's just click save on this and take a quick look. So now we can see we've got everything in place, and we can see we've got our burgers and our strawberry fool and all those kinds of good things all done. So that's the basic starting point. Now let's go and add in some more information, some of our ACF data that we created as part of our custom post type. So before we do though, let's just make sure we've got our card selected and just make this look a little different. So we're going to come into our styles, we're going to come into our layout, into our padding and connect all of these together, apply a little bit of padding around these. Not going to go too crazy, something like medium looks pretty good. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come down to our borders and we're going to apply a light border to this. So we'll connect all of these together, set a 1 pixel border, set this to be solid, and we'll just choose a light gray color, just so you've got something there to separate these out. And finally, we're going to come into our radius, connect those together. I'm going to make these a little larger, so we're going to set these to be medium. Because whenever you're working with any kind of radius, you'll see that I've set this one to be small, so it makes visual sense when you come to the actual outside ones that they're the next step up. Just everything looks nicer. As they get further into your design, those rounded corners should get smaller. And as they go further out, they should get bigger. That way you get a visual hierarchy with the corners. Okay, so again, let's just hit save. And we've now got our basics in place. So next up, let's go and add in some of that additional metadata. So we're going to add in a rich text element. We're going to just click to add a rich text element. We're going to position that underneath our heading. You see that's put the basic info in. Before we go any further, we're going to give this a global class. So again, we're going to use that BEM naming. So recipe card underscore underscore, we're going to call this meta. There we go. So with that class selected, we're going to come over into our styles, into our typography, and we're going to set this and make it just a little bit smaller. So we'll set this to be small. There you go. That looks a little bit better. And now we're going to come into our content. We're going to replace all this. We're going to delete what's there. We're going to call this prep time, colon. And now we're going to click on our little dynamic data icon. Come down to ACF this time. And what we're going to do is we want the preparation time. Choose that option from there. And you can see that now replaces with a value. So now we can just put in mins, and then we can just add anything else we want in. So we'll put yield in. Again, same thing. I'm going to click on a little lightning bolt, come to ACF, choose yield. And you can see that puts the information inside there. And finally, we're going to add one more in, which is going to be the actual category or categories that this particular recipe is from. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our little lightning bolt again. This time, we're going to choose the option for terms. And we're going to scroll on through until we find the option for post terms recipe type. Choose that option from there. And you can see that now puts in this example, desserts, main meal, and so on. It also automatically makes it a link, which is pretty cool, which is going to take it to that other template that we've set up when we set the conditions up for any of these sort of subsections of our taxonomies and so on. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so we've now added in some custom information. So let's make these titles a little bold, so we can see what they make sense to. And there we go. Now let's just click on save. Let's preview this. And as you can see, now we've got all the information available, including our custom meta information. So the final thing we need to do is just make these a clickable link to go and actually take a look at the recipe itself. Because at the moment, you can't click on anything to go anywhere. To do that, we're simply going to choose our image. And from there, we're going to come over to the content option, come down to where it says link. We're going to say other URL. Our link type is going to be external URL. Click our little lightning bolt, and from there we're going to choose the option for post URL. Again, you won't see it like this. You'll just have a long list. Just scroll through until you find the exact same values I'm choosing. Choose that option, and we are done. So again, we'll save that, and let's go and test it out. So let's view on the front end. That's now clickable. So if we click on our strawberry fool, for example, that'll take us over to a really ugly looking page that has only the most basic of information and not everything we need. So that's the first part done. We've created our archive. Now we're going to go and create the single post type and add in some of the additional information, including our repeater regions. Okay, so now the archive is finished. Time to move on to the single post template to show our full recipe and all the relevant details. So back into templates inside Bricks, we're going to add a new template. Again, give it a name that means something. Come over to the template type, and from there, we're going to choose the option for single. We'll publish, and we'll edit with Bricks. Like we did before, we need to make sure that we set up the conditions for where and when this is going to be used, and also to populate the data. So we're going to come over to our settings, into our template settings option, into conditions, add a new condition. This time from here, we're going to choose the option for post type as opposed to archive, and then we're going to choose our recipes. Next, come into populate content, and from there, we're going to choose the option for single post page. Click, and we're just going to search for one of our individual recipes. So we'll search for our cookies, and we'll click on OK, hit apply and preview, and like before, this will reload, and then we're ready to go. So just to make sure, we'll click on save. And like we did last time, we're going to go and add in a section to start off with. Again, we'll choose our section and we'll just apply a little bit of styling to this to give us a bit of space because of our navigation at the top. So we'll set 3XL. So like we did before, we'll select our container, we'll add in a heading, we'll add in an image, and we'll add in some rich text. And again, like we did before, we'll set the basics up, make sure everything is working, and then we'll start adding those extra little bits and pieces. So first of all, let's choose our heading, come over to our content, remove this placeholder, choose our little dynamic data icon, and choose our post title. There we go. Choose our image, click our dynamic data icon, choose our featured image. Finally, click on our rich text, remove what's in there in the placeholder, click our dynamic icon, choose our post, and this time we're going to choose the option for our post content. And there you go. We now have the basic elements being pulled in. So like we've done before, we can now start to add in extra things we want, give these global classes, making sure that everything is named accordingly, and then we can start styling everything the way that we need. So let's do that first of all. We'll change our container and we'll just call this recipe container. And what we're going to do is we're going to give that a global class as well. So come over to the left-hand side, we'll call this recipe-container and hit enter. So now we've given that a global class. And now we can just do exactly the same thing using our BEM naming for the elements inside there. So like we've done before, recipe-container __ heading. And just to make life a little easier, I'll copy this first part, hit enter. The same now for our image. So come over, paste that in, image, hit enter. And finally, there we go. So now we've applied those classes. Like we did before as well, we're going to come up to our recipe container, making sure we've got that class selected, come to our row gap, add in some spacing. So we'll do small like we did before, choose our heading, come over to our styles. And like I say, we're styling everything now on the global level. So again, if we wanted to make sure that these were using the same values, we could set up a global class for this and then apply it any way we want and override things. It's super simple once you get used to it, once you start to sort of forward plan how you're going to do things. So for this example, we're going to just set this up with our typography, set that to XL, and we'll set our font style and weight and uppercase. There we go. So there's the first part. Like we've done with our image, we'll select our image, making sure the class is selected, come over into our borders. From there, we're going to apply some rounded borders on this. We'll set medium like we've done before. And there we go. So we've now got the basics all in place. This is just our basic information, none of our ACF data. So let's start to add that in now. We're going to add another rich text area in. We'll position that below the heading, above the image. Like we've done before, we can now give this a class if we want to. We can also set up what values we want inside there. So for this example, let's come into our content, remove this placeholder, start adding in our data. So we'll start with our preparation time. Like we did before, we'll click our dynamic data. This time we're going to come down to ACF and we're going to say preparation time. A couple of dashes inside there, make this bold. You kind of get the idea. This is just basically repeating what we've done before. So I'm not going to go into all the detail and cover every single aspect of this. I'll just do some of the basics. This time we'll do calories. Again, we'll click our little dynamic data icon and we'll choose the option for calories per serving. And the final one we'll add in is going to be categories. So again, click our little data dynamic icon. This time we're going to choose the option for terms. And like we did before, we're going to choose the option for our recipe types. And we'll just make that bold. And there we go. Let's hit save. And as you can see, now that's put in the relevant information all in there for us. Okay, so that's pretty cool and pretty easy to do. Now, let's come over and I want to split this into two columns now. We want to put the nutritional information on the right-hand side and everything else on the left-hand side. So the easiest way to do that is we're going to come to our rich text. We're going to add in a couple of blocks. We're going to pop in our rich text into the first one. Next up, we're going to add in a container. And put both of our blocks inside that container. There we go. So now what we can do is we can simply come to our container, set this to be grid. I'm going to change this to 2 FR for the left column and 1 FR for the right column. And you can see now we split that into 2 columns. And finally, we're going to come in here and we're going to set our spacing, which I think we did medium before. There we go. So now we've got our nice simple 2-column layout. So now what we could do is we've got some basic info in there. We now need to just go and add in the extra ACF data. So it's all very simple and straightforward, making sure you've got the relevant block open. We'll click to add in more data. So we'll add rich text in one more time. Make sure that's selected and delete this placeholder information. Come to our dynamic data, over to ACF, choose our ingredients in this example. We'll do this one more time. So we'll just simply duplicate this. Choose that, change that from post content. This time again, we're going to come into ACF. We're going to go into our instructions, reposition those if you've got the wrong way around, which I have. Okay, so that's all that done. So we're going to come into our block again, like we've done before. We're going to come into our row gap and we're going to set that to be small so we can separate things out. And finally, we're going to come into our rich text for our ingredients. And from there, we're going to come over and we're going to give this a class. So like we've seen before, this is our recipe container, and __ ingredients. So you don't need to apply classes to everything if you're not actually making any changes to them. So for example, where we've got the instructions and things like that, I'm going to leave those as they are. I don't need to apply a global class to them because I'm not actually doing anything to them. So you can leave them as they are. This rich text, let's change that from rich text and we'll call that ingredients, just so we can see what this actually relates to. And now when we've got that, let's go into our styles and let's just style that so it looks a little different. So we'll connect these up. We'll apply some padding, go for something like medium. We'll set this to be a minimum width of 100%. Control background. Choose a color. We'll go for this light color. Come into our border. Connect these and apply a 1 pixel border all the way around. Set it to be solid. We'll make that a slightly darker blue, something like this. And finally, we'll connect these and we'll set some rounded corners. So again, we're going to go for medium. And there we go. We now have things laid out. So now obviously we want to make sure that everything is positioned the way it needs to be. So we'll just drag that up in between the two of those. And there you go. You can see we've now inserted that element. So obviously there's a lot more you could do here with styling and design and all those kinds of things. But this is more about showing you how to build it and how to get things set up. And then you can design this however you want. Okay, so we're now ready to move on to the nutritional information in this right-hand column. So first of all, let's select the column. We're going to add in a heading. I'm going to change this over and call this nutritional information. While we're at it, let's rename this left-hand block to nutrition block. And for ease, let's just resize this to make it a little smaller. So we'll choose our heading, come to our styles, and we're going to come in to our typography. Set this to be something like large. There we go. Okay. Now we've done that, we need to put in a couple of blocks underneath to kind of break things out. We've got some information on the left-hand side and the right-hand side we want to separate out. So to do that, we're going to add in a couple more blocks. We'll add our first block in, we'll select it, and we're going to add 2 blocks inside there. So this is going to kind of be the parent container for this, and then these are going to be the left and right-hand sections. So what we'll do is we'll choose our block, and from there we're going to come over to our content. We're going to set this to grid. We're going to set 1FR, 1FR. So we now have those side by side and everything looking good. I'm not going to worry about putting a gap in between because the information is going to be pushed over to the left-hand side and the right-hand side. There's a natural gap between anyway. Okay, so first of all, let's choose our first block. And inside there, we're going to come over and we're going to add in some dynamic data. So we're going to add in some rich text. Choose our rich text block and get rid of this information here. I'm going to choose our dynamic data. Come down to ACF, and this time we're going to choose our information from our nutrition options, which are the 3 different fields we've got inside our repeater. So the first one is our nutrition type, so we'll add that. Then we're going to put a dash, and we're going to put in another field. So we're going to click again down to ACF. This time we're going to put the nutrition value. There we go. So those are the first 2 pieces. Now if we scroll up, you can see nothing's really showing up inside there. That's because, again, we haven't set a loop up on this. So once we set the loop up, this will start to fill the data out. So worry about that in a second. So we're going to select our second block, which is our right-hand block. Again, we're going to use the option for rich text. Choose that rich text block. Delete our placeholder information. Back into our dynamic data and choose ACF. This time choose our daily allowance. Choose that option from there. We'll align this over to the right-hand side. Make sure we've got our block selected, and we're going to set this again over to the right hand side as well to make sure that sits on the right location. Okay, so now we're going to come back up to the parent block, the one that sits above these two individual blocks, the left and right hand block. Again, hope that's making sense. And what we're going to do is we're going to come over, choose query loop, then come down to our query option, and from there we're going to change the type and choose ACF repeater nutritional information. This is one of the reasons why I love working with bricks. I don't need any third-party tools to be able to handle things like repeater regions. So now all I need to do is choose that option. I'm not going to worry about a template or text or anything else. You can see that's now pulled in the relevant information for me. We're basically done on that side of things. Now all I need to do is apply a little bit of styling to this to make it look the way that I want. That's all really super simple. So we can come into, for example, our rich text, and what we can do is we can just apply again a class to this. So we'll just call this nutritional text. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on the second option, and we're going to do the same thing again there. So nutritional text. So we're going to apply the same class to both of these. And you see now both of those have this blue outline. So now what we can do is any changes we make to this will apply to both of them because it's using the same class. So now if we come into style, for example, choose our font size, and we'll set this to be something like small. Even though this isn't showing properly, which is a kind of quirk you get with Bricks Builder, that now has picked up those relevant values and we'll apply it to all of these inside the loop. So if we save this, we'll refresh and see if that'll actually update correctly. It doesn't. We'll view this on the front end. You can see everything is showing up the way it should do inside there. And if we take a look, all our styling is in place, all our information is in place. You can see everything is showing up inside there for the repeater. Got our custom information. If we click on this category now, which will take us to that template we created for the archive and applied that extra condition to it, you see we go to desserts, that will show us all the desserts. And if we click on this strawberry fool, for example, you can see there's our nutritional information, all the information about how to cook it or how to make it or whatever the case is. Everything is laid out really all set up in a very simple and straightforward fashion. Now there's way further you could go with this, and I would take this a lot further when it comes to the styling and adding extra features in and things like that. But what this should demonstrate is how you can take those component pieces, work with archives, work with templates, work with conditions, work with dynamic data, work with repeater regions and so on, all inside Bricks itself with no additional plugins required to be able to create really quite advanced websites using some pretty straightforward techniques. Now, as always, I'd welcome your feedback. If you've got anything you'd like me to cover, anything you'd like me to sort of expand upon from what I've covered in this video, let me know in the comments section down below. And if you want to find out more about the tools that I'm using with Bricks to create these kinds of sites and speed up my workflow, you can check out my blueprint right here. Take a look at that. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.